Hello, everyone. Hello, and welcome to today's Monday Q&A. My name is Susanna Briscoe-Alba, lead career strategist at Dunamis Coaching and Consulting Services. And you have been asking me, Suze, how do I win my next interview over? Like, how do I dominate my second interview? What do I say? What do I ask? How do I know? So a lot of you have been DMing me and asking me, what do I do at my second interview? Hey, IG fam bam, how are you today? Listen, if you can hear me and see me well, can you drop a 1 in the chat for me? If you can hear me and see me well, can you drop a 1 in the chat for me? Okay, I'm excited to connect with y'all today. I want to make sure that I am hydrated, that I am ready, because I got some tea for y'all today. So if you can hear me well and see me well, drop a 1 in the chat. If you are new to my space, my friend, welcome. My name is Susanna Briscoe-Alba. I'm the lead career strategist at Dunamis Coaching and Consulting Services, where we teach you how to land 6-figure roles through leadership development and career strategy. And today we're going to be talking career strategy, how to nail your second interview. You have been asking me this question. What questions do I ask? What should I be paying attention to? How do I know if it was a good second interview? What does it mean if I get called for a second interview? So I'm going to give you the tea as a hiring manager, what that all means. And I hope that today it'll give you some peace. But listen, if this is your first time catching a live with me, welcome. If this is your first time, I want you to drop a 2 in the chat and tell me where you are watching me from. Okay. And if you find that the lives are helpful to you, friend, do me a favor and share it with somebody. Share this live with someone else. And let them know you don't. So if this is your first time catching a live, I want you to drop a 2 in the chat. If this is not your first time catching a live, but you've been rocking with me for some time, I want you to drop a 3 in the chat. If this is not your first time, if you are a repeat friend, I want you to drop a 3 in the chat and tell me where you are watching from. And I want you to welcome our new folks. So to my 2s, welcome. I am glad that you are here. I hope that you leave better than when you came in. To my 3s, hey friend, hey Try, what's going on? All right, so 3s, help me welcome the 2s, and 2s, we are glad you are here. 2s and 3s, which is all of y'all, share this with someone else who you think would be benefit from this type of information. All right, so let's get right into it. In terms of second interviews, what you're looking for, okay? What to experience, what can you expect? I'm going to give you just kind of my take on what a second interview looks like for me when I am coordinating and dealing with candidates, what I'm looking for, what type of questions do I ask, and in the same token, I'm gonna share with you what kind of questions you should ask, and I hope that at the end I'll be able to answer some of your questions. Okay. So the first thing, let's break down a second interview, okay? So in some spaces, second interviews are usually because there are one or more candidates that we think would be a really good fit. And so second interviews serve to be the tiebreaker. So let's assume that I posted a position. Of that position, we had hundreds of applications, but we interviewed 7. And out of those 7, there were 3 that we really liked, and we will call them back for a second interview. Notice the difference in volume in terms of who we're calling back, right? So we started off with 7 and we're calling back 3 so that we can have a second interview with them. The reason that becomes really important for you to know is because 9 times out of 10, we're not calling back every single person in the pool. We're calling the most qualified candidates, and we're just trying to find the tiebreaker. Why is this important for you? Okay. Y'all are liking my frames. Yes. Thank you. Why is it important for you to know that? Okay. So when we are interviewing, it is important that you should ask next steps after your first interview. Okay. It is important that you should ask next steps after your interview, because that will give you insight into where you fall in the interview process. Okay. That will give you insight into where you fall into the interview process. So, how many of you have gone on an interview and you're like, Suzanne, well, I know, but how many of you have experienced where you've gone on an interview and it's been like a week and you haven't heard anything from anyone? Or it's about a week and a half and you haven't heard back from anyone. They told you that they were interested in you, but you haven't heard back from anyone. Has anybody been there where you've been in an interview, you thought it went well, you were vibing with everybody, you thought you had a shoe in, but for some reason or another, time has passed and no one has gotten back to you? Okay. The reason that I encourage you to ask what are the next steps throughout this process is because you want to be aware of how many candidates they are interviewing. So, like that, you can kind of prepare to a degree how long it will take before they get back to you. Okay. So more often than not, what I get a lot of questions in my DMs is, Susanna, I went on an interview, everything went really well, but I haven't heard back from the company in the last 4 days. My first question is, did you get a sense for how many people they were interviewing for this role? That's a question that you can ask. Okay. So you can ask that at the end of your interview. You can ask more or less, can you share with me where do I fall in this interview process? That is a very important question for you to ask. Because if you were one of the very first that came in to interview and we are interviewing 5 other people, you can likely, unless they're going to interview all 5 in the same day, which very rarely doesn't always happen, but unless they're going to interview all 5 on the same day, you could be waiting about a week for them to comb through the first round of interviews. You need to ask these types of clarifying questions. Okay. So at the end of your first interview, you should ask, where do I fall in terms of the next steps for this role? That becomes very, very important, because then, like that, you know whether or not you have a shot, number one. And number two, you know that you can continue to interview because they just started their interviews, or they're in the middle of their interview process, or you're at the end of the interview process. Okay. If you're picking up what I'm putting down, I want you to drop a 4 in the chat. If you're picking up what I'm putting down, I want you to drop a 4 in the chat, because I don't want you to feel as if they're not interested in you. It just might very well be that you were one of the first and we have 6 other candidates to get through. So unless I'm interviewing all 6 candidates on the same day, you could find yourself waiting until we get through all of those interviews. And then you will get a phone call for your second interview. Okay, so, all right, so you guys are giving me 4s. You are picking up what I'm putting down. So then you will find yourself waiting. On average, I would say give yourself about a week after that first one, especially if they have multiple candidates that they are interviewing for a process. Give yourself time. Okay. You are likely not the only one that is being interviewed unless you have a connection. You are likely not the only one that is being interviewed for that role. So if you don't hear anything within 2 days, that's actually quite normal. Okay. So give yourself some time, but you also want to make sure that you're asking the right questions. So could you share with me where I fall in this process? Okay. And then, like that, I don't want you putting all of your eggs in one basket. Because the other problem that I find is that you get really excited that you have an interview and then you stop applying. You go on the interview and then you never hear back from anybody. Ghosting is very much a real thing, but I'm not talking about that in this kind of instance. So you got really excited, you went on the interview, all the things, and then you stopped applying for new opportunities. Always, always, always keep applying. Okay. So the first half of this is understanding the interview process. And I am going to give it to you from my hiring manager perspective. Likely there's going to be multiple candidates. And from there, we are going to call in our top 2 or 3 candidates. Out of a pool, let's say of 7 that we interviewed before, we will call in 2 or 3 into the second interview. Okay. Now, timeline, becomes very important, because the first interview will likely be with either a recruiter and or somebody who is going to be working alongside you and could possibly be like a colleague or adjacent to the role that you're going to be, and maybe a supervisor. Okay. So that's the variety of like people that you can be connecting with. More often than not, it's likely going to start with a recruiter. Okay. That's going to be the first conversation that you will have, where they're kind of just screening you, making sure that you understand why to. They're trying to identify if you are a perfect fit or a good match for the role. Okay, so this is why it becomes really important for you to be able to share your expertise and do your research when you are having these conversations. Okay, so now let's say we've gotten to the second interview. We've called you to the second interview, and you're like, what do I say? What do I say? So the first thing that I want you to be aware of is that during the second interview, it's a tiebreaker. More often than not, it's a tiebreaker conversation. So when it comes to that second interview, we're going to be asking you a few questions. And I have my questions kind of typed out and written out. So like that, you can get an understanding of the type of questions that I would ask. So one of the questions that I would ask is, do you prefer to work alone or do you prefer to work with a group? You will have to have your response for that. I can't give you that one. Do you prefer to work alone or do you prefer to work with a group? Can you tell me about how you have impacted your current role and why are you looking for a new opportunity? Can you tell me about how you've impacted your current role and why are you looking for a new opportunity? Okay. That's usually what we're going to, those would be the questions that I would be asking. So remember, keep in mind that the first interview is going to be preliminary. It might be even, do they like you? Can they see potential in you? But the second interview is going to be way more focused. So it's going to be likely questions. Tell me about a time you had a challenging colleague or a challenging customer or a challenging situation, and how did you handle it? Do you prefer to work by yourself or do you prefer to work with a group? Help me understand what interests you about this role and why. How do you see yourself impacting the work that we are doing at this organization? Those would be the types of questions that I would be asking during a second interview. And those should be the questions that you should be preparing responses for. And here's the thing, I don't want you just to have like shoot off a response and then wait for them to give you another question. Interviews should be more conversational than they are anything else, because you should be interviewing them as much as they are interviewing you. So I just gave you some of the questions that I would ask as a hiring manager, okay, in my second interview. I would also ask you, can you describe for me what your day-to-day looks like at your current role? Because I want to get a better understanding of how you perform and what your daily tasks look like. There's a couple things that as a hiring manager, I'm trying to pay attention to. Okay. So those would be questions that I would ask in the second interview. Okay. So if you got it, I want you to type questions in the chat, because I want to make sure that you understand the types of questions that I, as a hiring manager, would be asking. For me, as a hiring manager, the second interview, 9 times out of 10, is going to be more behavioral, because I want to make sure that not only do you, like, everybody likes you, because likability is a good thing, but I want to make sure that you are about what you say you are. So I'm going to ask you those types of questions that will likely make you feel uncomfortable for a little bit. But if you're telling me that you do well under pressure, I'm assessing in this conversation whether or not you are being truthful to what you're saying. Can you, in fact, do well under pressure? Okay. So now you guys have gotten the questions that I, as a hiring manager, would ask. Does that mean that every hiring manager would ask those questions? Probably not. But there will be some variation of that I want you to be prepared for. Okay. Now, I would not be your coach if I didn't give you questions to ask. Okay. So on this part, I'm going to give you questions that I would want candidates to be aware of, to ask, to make sure that you get a better understanding of what you're walking into. Because let's play a little game. If you have gone on an interview and you've gotten really excited about the position, and then you start working there and you're like, this ain't nothing like what y'all said it was going to be. Has that ever happened to anybody? I want you to raise your hand in the chat, because I wonder if it's just me. Has anybody ever been in that place where you've applied for a role, you got the role, all the things, and then you started working there and you were like, something about this just don't feel like this just don't feel right. So I'm going to give you some of the questions that I would encourage you to ask, just so like that you can get a better picture or a better understanding of what to expect. And you can ask these questions at any given point, y'all, but I'm going to encourage you to ask these questions at the second interview, because if they're calling you for a second interview, it's because they already think that you are a good candidate for the role. Now it's your turn to assess, do you in fact want this role? Okay, so if you're ready, I want you to type ready in the chat. If you're ready, I want you to type ready in the chat, because I'm going to give you some questions that I want you to be prepared for. Okay, and that you should be asking. Like, these are questions that I would encourage any of you to be paying attention to and to be asking. So the first thing, or the first question that I would encourage you to ask, is going to be, can you share with me some of the characteristics of someone who you have seen successful in this role? Can you share with me what are some of the characteristics of someone who has been successful in this role? And the reason that you want to ask that question is because 9 times out of 10, you, again, at a second interview, you may or may not be interviewing with a hiring manager or a decision maker. So you want to ask that type of question, because if they are the leader, they should be able to give you characteristics of what their successful team looks like. Because what we're not trying to do is walk into a dumpster fire. Okay? Y'all get it? So we want to make sure that we're asking those types of questions. Can you share with me what are some of the characteristics of someone who has been successful on this role? Okay. And I want you can, again, second interview, so you can ask more clarifying questions. So if they give you responses and you are not clear on what they mean, or they're not clear, the responses to you, you can ask them, can you clarify? Because then, like that, you have a better understanding. Now, let's assume you've gone for this interview and this is a new role, right? So it's not a role that existed prior. This is a new role. Then my question would be similar, but here, pick up the change. Being that this is a new role, can you help me understand what success would look like in this role, and how would you have helped me to achieve success? Ooh! Oh, that's a spicy one. Can you help me understand what success would look like in this role, and how would you have helped me to achieve this success? Because the other aspect to this question, the reason that you want to ask this question, is because you want to be aware of what the expectation is. So if it's a new role and they have not necessarily defined what success looks like, then you also don't want to walk into a role where they're expecting you to change everything on a dime and they have no clue what success looks like. I don't want you to walk in and set yourself up for disappointment. Okay? So that's how I would answer, or that's the question that I would ask if it were me and it was a second interview and this role did not exist before. Because if we're going to define success together, then tell me that. That's fine. But that answers the question of, how would you have helped me to get there? So that question was, can you help me understand what success would look like in this role, and how would you have helped me to get there? And that will also give you, ladies and gentlemen, insight into how this person or these individuals lead, or what is the culture at this organization. Because they will either coach you through to bring you to a successful place, or they'll leave you on your own so you can flounder and figure it out. And then when things don't turn out the way that they want, they'll just blame it on you. So this is why you need to ask clarifying questions, especially during a second interview. And I don't want you to approach a second interview in fear, okay? Because that's another thing, that people get so nervous and you approach it in fear, like, oh my God, they called me for a second interview. What if we reframe that and said, I know they would call me for a second interview because I got it like that. Because I'm the subject matter expert. That's what I want you to understand. So I'm going to repeat that question again for those of you who may have missed it. The second question that I would ask, if it were a new role that didn't exist and they called me for a second interview, during our conversations, I would ask them, can you help me understand what success would look like in this role, and how would you have helped me to get there? And at that point, because I understand that many of you get nervous during an interview, I do too. At that point, I would be quiet and I would grab a pen and start taking notes. Because number one, that eases your nerves. And number two, that helps you to clearly understand or be able to write down what you are hearing. And then you can repeat back what you have heard. Okay. So that's the way that I would ask that question. And then probably the next question that I would ask surrounding that second interview, I would want to get a sense of how many candidates they're interviewing for this role, even in this second interview. So like that, I know where I stand. But I would also want to get a sense of what their leadership style it looks like and what they have helped their team to achieve. Right? So it could sound something like, in the past week, what are some of the successes that you can celebrate that you and your team have accomplished? In the past week, what are some of the successes that you can share that you and your team have accomplished? Why in the past week? Can anybody guess why I'm asking you in the past week and not what are the successes of the team? Let me see. Can anybody guess why I'm asking you in the past week? Let's see. Let's see if anybody can share. Right. So the reason that I'm asking, in the past week, what are some of the successes that you can share about your team, is because I want to know how involved you are. Are you the type of leader that is just going to leave me out here to figure it out? Or are you engaged, and are you supportive? Are you willing to be with your team, engaged with your team, instead of just being over your team? Can y'all see the difference? I hope you can pick up what I'm putting down, because there's one thing for a leader to be engaged, to be a part of the conversation, and maybe not holding your hand through the process, but being able to provide you insight, being able to hear where you're at, giving you more direction than just someone who sits in their office over everyone else and doesn't really help in this. Like, their ideas sound good in their head, but in practicality, nobody knows what you're thinking. So this is why I'm asking in the past week, because I want to know how engaged you are. Because for me, and it may not be important for you, and that's okay, but for me, I am looking for someone who offers me that type of engagement, because I know how Susanna works. So then when we have our review, or we have our mid-year review or our end of year review, not much of what I'm going to share is going to catch you by surprise, because we've been actively working together. Instead of many situations where the only time that you're speaking with your direct supervisor or your one-on-one is once a year. And to me, at that point, that's an exit interview, Because if you've not been able to provide me with any direction, if you haven't been involved, if you haven't taken interest in the projects that I have going on, how can you give me constructive feedback for me to continue to grow? Okay. So that's the type of questions that I would ask. Those are the types of questions that I would ask. And that's the way that I see things, not only as a hiring manager, but that's the way that I see things as an employee. When I was an employee, those were the questions that I was asking to make sure that I was not setting myself up to just be frustrated and annoyed. Okay. So I want you to be very mindful of the types of questions that you are asking. Because once you have a better understanding of the environment in which you're in, and you've asked some of these questions, when you get to the next phase, which is usually the offer and the negotiation phase, you now have a whole lot more context. Okay. So that's the way that I ask questions. So far, I've told you what to expect for a second interview in terms of who you could be speaking with, where you fall in the interview process and timeline to expect. So far, I've told you what types of questions you should be asking as the candidate and the questions that I would ask as a hiring manager. Okay. So I want you to pay attention to these things because this is like masterclass level stuff that I'm giving y'all on this live. And for those of you who are asking on all of the platforms, yes, this live will be saved. You will be able to get it back for sure. I wouldn't do you like that. If I'm not going to save a live, I will tell you. So yes, you will be able to go back to these. If you missed one of my questions and you want to be able to write them down, you definitely will be able to go back to those. Okay. So if it is a new role and it does not exist and you're the first person who's going to be in this role, I would ask questions surrounding, can you help me understand what success looks like in this role and how would you have helped me to achieve success? And then the other question I would ask is, in the past week, can you share with me what have been some of the wins on your team? In the past week, can you share with me what have been some of the wins that the team has accomplished? Because again, we want to get a better idea of who we working for. Okay. And then the last thing that I want you to pay attention to are the signs. Okay. So a lot of folks go on the interviews, on any interview and just in general, but many people will go on a second interview and they'll show up in my DMs or we'll meet for a one-on-one, like a career consultation. And my first question to you is going to be, can you give me feedback of your last interview? How'd it go? And the response is usually, oh, I think it went well. I don't know. Did you ask any questions? Yeah, I asked. Okay, great. What questions did you ask? Oh, I asked like when can I hear back from them? I asked about the salary. I asked and then I didn't have any more questions. Oh, and then I'm like, ladies and gentlemen, every interview there is feedback that I want you to pay attention to. Okay. And I don't have a lot of time to break this down, but I promise I will do another one just so that just on feedback that you're getting. But on a second interview, you can tell if an interview is going well or if it's going haywire by certain body language cues and also by the way that they refer to you and ask you questions throughout the interview. You need to pay attention to those things. Okay. The first thing that we're going to do is when a candidate, when we have solidified, at least for me, and I can't speak for everybody, but when I have solidified in my mind that this is a candidate that I think would be a really good fit for a role, they will start to speak to you, the interviewer will start to speak to you in future as if you are already a part of the team. And it will sound something like, oh, you're really going to enjoy working with Susanna, or I can't wait for you to meet Eric on our team, or it sounds like you and such share a commonality. When they start speaking to you like that, that means that they're already seeing possibility with you joining this team. So if you are in the second interview or if you're in the first and you want to try to get a gauge of how well this interview is going, pay attention to if they're speaking to you in future. I can't wait for you to connect with such and such who's on our team, because that is giving you feedback and indication that there is the possibility of you doing a good job, okay? Or of you being able to nail this role. So I want you to pay attention to those things. The other thing that I want you to pay attention to is, what is their body language like during an interview? So when I am on an interview, I will typically have something to take notes with. I can tell you what my setup looks like because it doesn't change. I will have something to take notes with. So I'll have a notepad of some sort. Okay. I will have a writing utensil of some sort. And I will likely have water next to me because since we're talking, my throat gets dry and I like to make sure that I stay hydrated. But if the interviewer, especially during a second interview, if they remain open, so you see how I'm kind of just sitting back and I'm open to that. I'm open in the way that my body stance is. I look very relaxed. This means that we're just having conversation. If during an interview you say something and I lean in, that to me, and to you now, okay, to me and to you, that means that there is something that you said that has piqued my interest that I want to get a closer understanding of. So this is what I want you to pay attention to. If you're in an interview and the interviewer is sitting like this and they're writing notes of what you're saying, and all of a sudden you say something and they sit up and get closer to kind of get a better understanding, you don't freak out. You pause, you smile, and you ask, is there something that I can clarify for you? It looks like you may have a question, and I want to give space for that. This is how you turn the interview into a conversation. And they may say no, or they may say, you know what, that was a really good point. Can you expand on that? Can you talk a little bit more about that? And so you should have stories and you should have information surrounding your career that, should that happen, you have examples to give. And it's not like you have to be like, because what's going to happen is that you made a really good point. And now I want to know more about it. I am showing you with my body language that I'm interested. And now you don't know how to respond. I'm going to go right back to where I was. Can y'all see the difference in my body language? So I went from being engaged with what you had to say to now being back distant. That's feedback that you're getting during an interview. The more that they lean in, likely the more they're interested in what you have to say. So stop, don't freak out. Stop and ask clarifying questions. Is there something that I can make clearer for you? And you can even call it out. It seems like you're interested. So tell me more. What are you thinking? Okay. This is why I do these types of lives, because I see this a lot with interviewees and they miss an opportunity to shine because the nerves get the best of them. But today, that's not going to be you. Okay. So if you are claiming that that's not going to be me, I want you to say not me in the chat. Not me. Not me. Because I want you to be aware that this is something that is very real. And so you want to be aware of those body language cues. So if you got it, I want you to write not me in the chat, because your next interview, your next second interview, you're going to walk in there like the boss that I know that you are. Because if you're watching me, you know you that girl. You know you got it. So you want to walk in and own that. Don't run from it. Okay. The other thing that you want to pay attention to, especially if it is during a virtual interview. So virtual interviews, people get really nervous, but truth is that virtual interviews, they can only see one side, which is the side of the camera. They can't see what's going on around you. So if you are in the middle of an interview, okay, and it's a virtual interview, and you're trying to assess whether or not the interviewer is engaged, pay attention to their facial expressions. So if you were to say something, because my glasses, let me see if I can change them. Because my glasses cover my eyebrows, but eyebrows really give you cues as well into what people might be saying. All right, so let me change these out, and I'm going to show you what this looks like. So let's assume that you and I are in an interview, and you say something, and you can't really tell if they're leaning in or not. If the interviewer, if while you're saying something, the interviewer goes, see how you can see my brows? That is a face that I want more information. Give me more of that. Or you can ask clarifying questions the same way that you do when you're in person. I see that piqued your interest. Can I clarify anything for you? Or do you have any questions for me at this time? Especially if they're giving you those types of facial expressions. Okay. You can tell when someone is nervous, especially after I've been doing this for a while. I can tell when someone is nervous when they start clasping their hands a lot, when they start scratching their nose during a virtual interview. There's a lot of this. It's like, oh, okay. There's nothing on your face. You're good. You're good. Let's just stick to the question. Okay. Pay attention to smiles. Pay attention to what they're doing with their face. Are they looking at you? Or are they kind of looking off to the side? And it doesn't necessarily mean that the interview is going bad. I just want you to pay attention to the cues that you are getting. Okay. So whether it's a virtual interview or it's an in-person interview, pay attention to facial expression and body language. Okay. So I hope that this is helping y'all. If you are having the old school way, the last one that I'm going to give you kind of vibes for, because this one you will not be able to see the individual. This is going to be one that happens over the phone. So typically phone screenings, there's no camera, there's no in the same room. They are over the phone and you are over the phone. I'm going to give you tips that I used to give my students, and that I'm going to consider y'all students of mine too. When you are going to take a phone screening type of call, do not take that at the place where you're currently working. Because I, as a hiring manager, y'all, I'm telling you, I can't tell you how many of my former employees, really, there weren't that many, but I can tell you that I had former employees where I walked into their office and they were on an interview. And guess who they listed as a reference? Right. How do you think that conversation went? So don't take a phone interview at the current place where you are working, because they can likely walk in the middle of an interview. Don't do that. Okay. The second thing is that when you are taking a phone interview, do not, please do not take the call through headphones or take the call on speaker or take the call other than holding the phone to your ear. Take the phone and hold it to your ear, because there is nothing more frustrating than me trying to interview a candidate, and we got to spend the first 2 or 3 minutes of a 15-minute call. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Hello? Hello, can you hear me? Hello, can you hear me well? And the reason that I'm sharing this with y'all is because common sense is not a flower that grows in everybody's garden. And so I want you to be aware that if you are getting a phone call, 9 times out of 10, they're going to tell you it's a phone call. If you are getting a phone call, hold the phone to your ear. Do not take the call in the place where you are currently working. And the last thing that I'm going to share with y'all, there's so much more that I can share, but the last thing that I'm going to share with y'all is that we can, on the other side of the phone, your mind and your eyes can't see the individual, so we're left to imagine, okay? So give yourself the strongest opportunity, and when you're on the phone, smile. Smile. I know it sounds ridiculous. I know it sounds crazy. But when you just operate differently when you have a smile on your face. You do. You sound different, the tonality on your voice changes. So if you are on a call and you're going to be on the phone, hold the phone to your ear. Be mindful of the environment in which you're in, okay? And smile, even if they can't see you. Because I can tell you that I have called candidates and I introduce myself. Well, before I introduce myself, I'll say, hello, can I speak to such and such? And they're like, hello. Oh, okay. Hi, my name is Susanna, and I'm calling about this position. I'm sorry. Hi, how are you? Immediately there's a change. Be mindful, ladies and gentlemen, of tonality. There's so much like behaviorally that I want you to be aware of, like emotional and social cues during an interview, that alive is just not enough time. But I hope that you're able to pick that up. Okay. So if you are so far, these are the things that we've covered for a second interview so that you can win during your second interview. The first thing was what to expect in terms of the difference between a first interview and a second interview, the questions that you ask between the first interview and the second interview. Okay. And thirdly, be aware to the signs and the feedback that you're getting. Body language, be aware of the way that they're speaking to you. If they're starting to speak to you in future, they think that you are a good fit. They can see you in this space. Okay. So be aware. And then the other part is your tonality and the way that you respond. There is nothing much more powerful than a person who speaks with confidence. And confidence is projected in the down tone. The down tone. So when you are on an interview, whether in person, on the phone, or virtual, try to keep your tonality on the down tone and not at a higher pitch. It sounds like this. So let's assume you and I are in an interview and you ask me, does this make sense? You hear that? You hear how my tone went up? Instead of this makes sense because. You see how my tone stayed the same? So when again, I don't have enough time to break it down for y'all, but be mindful of your tone. Speak with confidence, which is the down tone, instead of projecting your voice to get higher, because it sounds as if you're not very confident in what you're saying. Is this helping? Is this helping anybody today? If this is helping you, I want you to say helping me, because I just gave you a whole lot in the last half hour. Okay. So if this is helping you, I want you to say helping me. Rock with your girl. Okay. Beautiful. So for those of you who have second interviews, first of all, congratulations. You got a second interview. In this market, I know how hard that feels, and I know how hard it is. So congratulations to you. Okay. But I don't want you to fall prey to these mistakes. So make sure you're paying attention to what type of questions you are asking. Make sure you are aware of where you fall in the interview process. Are you the first person that they called for a second interview? Or are you the final person that they called for a second interview? Okay. You want to pay attention to that, because that will dictate and determine timeline. Okay. So I want you to be aware. And then thirdly, I want you to pay attention to the feedback that you're getting. So that last part that I told you about body language and tonality and smile and those kinds of things, that holds true for first, second, third interviews. Listen, now that I just said that, Anything over 3 interviews is a whole lot. Okay? And some of y'all are they're putting you through the ringer and you got 4, 5, 6 interviews. Please stop. Please stop. Unless it's an emergency, the interview process should not take 6 interviews. It really shouldn't. I've had clients of mine who get offers at Starbucks, like written, we're ready to hire you. We'd like to meet for coffee. Meet me here. And they come ready with an offer. And they've only been on 2 interviews. It sounds insane. It is still very possible. And these are not like small offers. These are like 6-figure offers. When a company has considered you their top candidate, they're going to treat you like one. So pay attention. Pay attention. When a company feels that you are their top candidate, they're going to treat you like one. So pay attention. I'm telling you from someone who used to hire and from someone who has operated at a 6-figure level, anything over 3 interviews is a lot of wasted time. Now, I can understand having to reschedule, but if you're going in and you're meeting with everybody and their mama, like, what are we doing? You know what that tells me? That we lack process and we lack procedure. Because for every single one of those people that you have had to interview with, that means that you have pulled them away from hours of work. And now we're backlogged. So those interviewers that are in there now have work that have to go, that is either going to get done by somebody else, or they're gonna be in the office way later than they need to because they've been interviewing for 12 hours or for 40 times. Somebody make it make sense. Okay? So please pay attention to those types of things. That's also feedback that you should be paying attention to. That's also feedback that you should be paying attention to. Okay? All right. So we went over the 3 things that to help you dominate your second interview. Because y'all were in my DMs like, Susanna, I got a second interview. I don't know what to do. What should I be talking about? I just told you what to do. Here's another caveat, because I know that there's a lot of people who follow me. A lot of the experience that I'm sharing with you is based off of what I've lived through and seen through as a US based employee, hiring manager, and business owner. So take what I'm sharing with you. If you're in a different country, take that with a grain of salt, because it's likely going to be different where you are at. However, if a company has chose you to be their top candidate, whether you are in the United States or any place else, they are going to let you know that you are their top candidate. It should never be a question. Oh, I'm not sure what it like I'm not, I don't know. No, baby, you know. You know. Okay? All right. I love y'all. All right, so let's get into your questions real quick. Let's see. Question here is, in the public school system, received a verbal offer but have not heard anything. It's been a month and I emailed them almost 2 weeks ago. What should I do? It's a job that I really want. Oh, Lord. So in the public school system, knowing what I know about education, especially around this time, calendars are probably quite packed just because end of school is coming, especially if you're in the school system. However, I would reach out to whoever was leading the charge in terms of the search for this role. And to be honest with you, I would not stop applying to new opportunities, even if this is the job that I really want, because it might be the job that I really want, but it may not be the job that really wants me. I'm going to say that again. It may be the job that I really want, but it may not be the job that really wants me. And so because I have tried to force to get myself into what I think is going to be my dream job, upon going in there, I realized that this is not the right environment for me. So I would continue to search. I would reach out to the individuals who are responsible for that last conversation that you had. Because knowing what I know about education, and it might differ because it's a public school, there's also the very real fact of enrollment. So if enrollment is low, likely there will be no reason to justify a new hire. Okay. So they're going to work with what they have. Or there's a higher decision maker who is out, but that still is information that you should know. So I hope that answered your question, Ashley. Never keep your eggs in one basket, my love. All right. Next question is, what is the key to crack case interviews? I'm not sure what that means. So Catan 4099, if you can give me more context, I will be happy to help you. Want to leave after 8 years because they're making too many excuses for my promotion. How do I say that? All right. So the question is, this individual has been at their role for 8 years. They want to leave because they keep dangling a carrot and then they move it. Sweetheart, my response would be, thank you so much for the opportunity to work here. But after careful consideration, I have opened myself to new opportunities, and here is my 2 weeks notice. That's how I would respond. I would look for another opportunity. And then if they counter it, then you can have a different conversation. But don't let people play in your face. Honestly, don't let them play in your face. Don't let them waste your time. If they keep sharing, oh, we're going to give you a promotion. Oh, we're going to do this. Oh, we're going to do that. And every time that time comes around, they move the goalpost. Baby, don't let them play with you. Find a new opportunity. And they don't need to know that you're looking. But once a new opportunity comes up, you'll be surprised how quickly people start moving, especially if you are really good at what you do. All right. Question here is it okay for you to speak with your hands while interviewing? I do. I don't know how else to be. I think that a lot of the way that I speak shows up in the way that I use my hands. The other thing that I will share, if you are trying to not use your hands so much, you can cross your hands in front of you and just use your thumbs, because I'll do that too. But I don't think that that diminishes anything, any potential from a candidate just because they speak with their hands. So I would say if that's the way that you speak, that's who you are. Stay true and genuine to who you are. Question here is there a recruiting assistant side to your business? So just G's, honey, I don't want to mispronounce or missay your name, but the question is, do we offer recruiting assistance at my agency? We do that. That's called a career consultation, where you can go to my bio and you can book a career consultation, and I'm happy to meet with you to help you identify what are some of the next best roles for you. All right, last question is, my second interview was going really well until I broke out in sweat from being nervous and verbally stated that I was nervous. Did I screw this up? No, I don't think I don't think that you screwed it up, my love, just by verbally stating that you were nervous. I think that that is something that very much happens to us. What I want you to be aware of is, if you know that interviewing makes you nervous, don't go into an interview cold turkey. Practice your responses. Practice or highlight for yourself what are the 3 to 5 career stories that you want to be able to expound upon. And by career stories, I'm talking about your experiences. What are 3 to 5 experiences that are unique to you, that if I were to ask you a question, you can draw upon that experience, so like that you have more tailored responses that don't make you so nervous. And I know that a lot of people are like, Susanna, how do I practice my responses? If you go through my page, I have shared with you a bunch of possible questions that you will get on an interview. There's also an incredible tool called GOOGLE that will help you to identify common questions that you will get asked during an interview. Identify what those questions are, and then create responses based off of those common questions. So, like that, you're not so nervous. Okay. And then the biggest tip that I can give you is, if you are nervous and you're not sure what they could possibly ask you during an interview, leverage free tools, because not everybody can work with me. I'm not for everyone, right? So leverage the free tools that you have. You can open a Chat GPT account, which is free 99, and you can tell Chat GPT, act as a hiring manager and tell me which questions you would ask me for, and then you insert the role that you're interviewing for. ChatGPT is going to give you a couple of questions. There you'll have possibilities that they will ask you. Okay. And then, like that, you don't have to stress. The AI that is free is giving you possible questions that will get asked, and now you can practice your responses. GOOGLE. Yes, y'all, do not underestimate the power of Google. Listen, I'm trying to help y'all. You go to Google and there's so many things that you can search. I think the biggest thing that holds up candidates is that you don't know what you're searching for. That's number one. And number two, there's a lot of noise out here on these internet streets. So I try to make it as simple and as pragmatic for you, because I know how scary it is. Trust me. I see it on the other side of the table. And I too have been on the other side of the table. So practice your responses, get comfortable hearing yourself respond. And once you have gotten comfortable with your response, record yourself. That's the other part that freaks people out. Record yourself. Okay. So I hope that this was helpful. Now, listen, I wouldn't be a true coach without giving you an opportunity to be able to continue to learn. So the other question that has been in my DMs nonstop, like legit nonstop, is, will I be hosting another resume bootcamp? For those of you who are working on your resume and you need resume support, and you're like, Susanna, I need help with resumes. Like, I don't even know where to start. I haven't looked at a resume in over 10 years. I haven't interviewed. I got you, friend. We are going to be hosting another resume bootcamp. Okay. We are going to be hosting another resume bootcamp. We will be dropping information for the resume bootcamp to the folks who are on my email list. Okay. To the folks who are on my email list. So if you comment the word email, my assistant, Susanna the bot, is going to send you the link to get on my newsletter, because on Thursday of this week, not only are we going to drop the date of when we'll be hosting the resume bootcamp, but we're also going to drop where you can register. Registration is going to go very quickly. And we have limited seats. So if you need help, okay, if you need help with your resume and you want us to work with you, you want to join the resume bootcamp. For those of you who are watching me on YouTube, Facebook, and LinkedIn, I am dropping the link. Hold on one second. I am going to drop the link for you to be able to register as well. So you're just going to go to www.susannaalba.co, and you're going to sign up for the email list. Okay. So it's www.susannaalba.co, and you're going to sign up for the Hey Sis newsletter. On Thursday of this week, we're going to be dropping the date and the time and where you will be able to register. Now, I would love to have all 700,000 of y'all join me. But the truth is that I have not figured out a way to be able to do that. So if you know that you are going to need help with your resume, whether you are a fresh grad, whether you are a seasoned professional and you haven't had to work on a resume in over 5 years, we will be hosting another resume bootcamp at the end of this month. On Thursday of this week, we will be dropping the date and the time and where you can register to join us for the resume bootcamp. Okay? So if you're watching me on IG and you comment the word email, my assistant, Susanna the bot, will send you where you can register to join us. If you are watching me on LinkedIn, YouTube, or Facebook, you will go to, I dropped in the comments for you where you can go so that you can get the information. It's susannaalba.co. I'm going to drop it again just so like that you have it. And you want to make sure that you get on the newsletter list, because on Thursday is when we're going to drop where you can register for it. Okay. So you want to register for Hey Sis. Tell a friend to tell a friend. Okay. Because it's going to be good. It's going to be good. We had a good time on our last one, and I anticipate that we will have a good time on this one. So please make sure that you get on the email list. On Thursday of this week, we will be emailing all of you that are on the list how you can join us for the resume bootcamp. Okay. And during the resume bootcamp, let me just break down what you can expect. So during the resume bootcamp, I'm going to share with you how my team and I craft resumes for our clients. And during the resume bootcamp, I also review resumes in real time. So if you sign up for the resume bootcamp, you will also have the opportunity to have me review your resume during the bootcamp. I'll give you pointers. I'll tell you what's missing, what needs to get fixed. So you want to make sure that you get in there early, because we'll have to close registration once we hit a certain number of folks. Okay. So get on the email list. The date for the resume bootcamp is going to go out on Thursday of this week. And it's going to be a good time. So if this helped you, I sure hope that it did. I hope that it gave you insight into how you can dominate your next interview. And I will catch all of y'all on the next one. Have the most amazing rest of your week. Thank you for rocking with me, and I'll catch you on the next one. Bye, everybody.